Lucas Koerner is a political analyst and journalist with online magazine Venezuela.com. He has kept a bird's eye view on the situation from the capital, Caracas, and he now joins us via Skype from there. Very good evening to you, Lucas. It's always a pleasure having you on the globe. Just how true are reports that top military leaders, one of Maduro's last bastions of support, are now starting to leave his side?
Well, as of now, there are no indications that Juan Maduro has, despite numerous appeals to the armed forces to oust Nicolas Maduro, there is no indication yet that the major generals in the armed forces are switching sides and abandoning the democratic elected government of Maduro.
Mexico and Uruguay are also ramping up efforts to mediate in Venezuela. Are these plans working, perhaps?
Yes, on February 7th, this Thursday, Mexico and Uruguay, along with the European Union, are hosting a dialogue summit that takes place in Montevideo, which is seeking to, along with the support of 4 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Bolivia, and one other, seeking in Mexico to, along with several European countries, to promote a negotiated solution to this political standoff. And in lieu of a U.S. military intervention, as Donald Trump alluded to yesterday morning, or the continuation of crushing economic sanctions that have been imposed on the country, including an oil embargo, which Trump also announced last week.
Let's talk about the safety of Mr. Guaido. Is he safe in Venezuela?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Let's talk about the safety of Mr. Juan Guaido. Is he safe in the country?
Mr. Guaido has been seen throughout Caracas. Last week he was at a convention at the Central University of Venezuela in the heart of Caracas. He has not been detained. Certainly, the Supreme Court issued an injunction preventing him from leaving the country and freezing his assets. But he is free to go about his business, and there seems to be no effort by the government to bring him into custody, despite his effective usurpation of the presidential function and his role, his active dialogue with the United States in an effort to overthrow the government, which you would think would be cause for his arrest. But as of now, opposition protests and Mr. Guaido's activities have gone unopposed without any kind of crackdown whatsoever.
Yeah, indeed. And what remains the driving force behind the backing that powers like Russia and the United States contribute to offer the different side? I mean, what do they have to gain?
Well, clearly, the United States has never tolerated the Bolivarian government in Venezuela. On April 11, 2002, the U.S. supported the short-lived Carmona dictatorship, which sought to side deals with the IMF and dissolved the very constitution that the Venezuelan opposition is today claiming as basis for its usurpation of the presidency. The United States clearly wants to install a government that is more amenable to its interests, and particularly, as John Bolton said last week, with regarding to the United States administration is in conversation with large U.S. petroleum companies to open up Venezuela's oil sector to these companies, and it's in the U.S. national interest to do so, he said. So clearly there is a geopolitical interest at stake. Russia, on the other hand, and China have enormous investments in Venezuela. Particularly, China has something like $50 billion that has lent the government over the past decade, and in different infrastructure projects and also in oil development. Russia likewise has made hefty investments, and they clearly recognize that they stand a much better chance of receiving payments for those on that debt, with the existing government rather than a U.S.-backed client regime.
When President Maduro was asked on a Spanish television yesterday if this crisis could lead potentially to a civil war, he said no one can answer that question with certainty. Now, could this non-committal be construed as an insinuation insinuation of a potential civil war, of course, perpetrated by his side or his faction?
Well, I think that comment did make a lot of waves. But interesting enough, Juan Guaido, in a speech on Saturday, likewise made a comment in which he said he was not afraid of a civil war in Venezuela, indicating that this is not something that he was prepared. He was something that he was prepared to accept if it were to occur. And remember that it is the United States which is threatening Venezuela with a quote-unquote military option, as Donald Trump indicated yesterday. And in that interview, which I did see, Maduro also said that it was not in his power necessarily to prevent a civil war, given that it's the United States which is attempting to overthrow his government through political, military, and economic force. Now, hopefully, through this kind of dialogue summit, which Maduro has enthusiastically embraced, there can be a negotiated settlement. But unfortunately, Donald Trump indicated yesterday that his government will not sit down to the table with Maduro despite repeated calls for dialogue with Washington, and that, as a result, we kind of see this more radical option being pushed by Washington, and one like, meanwhile, there's the opposition governor from Capture State on the border with Colombia, Lady Gomez, who said on Saturday that she rejects all, quote-unquote, foreign interventionism in her country, which she says will, quote, kill cause the death of many Venezuelans, unquote. So we have started to see official within the opposition with a more moderate faction supporting dialogue, while a more extreme faction aligned with the White House that wants to oust Maduro at any cost.
So with what's been unfolding in Venezuela, to get a sense that his camp is giving in to this crisis, or is he likely to leash his military onto the protest?
I think that, as you saw with the pattern, on Saturday, you had a massive opposition protest in the east of the city, smaller than the 23rd of January, and you also had a very, very sizable pro-government march in the west of the city, which, according to the NGO Foro Penal, there was no incidents whatsoever of violence or of government crackdown. No arrests to be reported on. So there really is I think that the government is doing its best to avoid any kind of what can be construed by Washington as a provocation to justify some kind of military action in the country.
The European Union doesn't make a decision on whether to support a government or not. So why is this kind of support that's been lavished on Venezuela be construed as some sort of endorsement of Mr. Guaido's legitimacy as president?
So you've seen so far only 6 European countries: France, Germany, the UK, Spain, Denmark, and Holland, which have come out and officially endorsed Juan Guaido. But there's no consensus within the European Union as such to recognize Guaido. In fact, a number of countries, including Greece, Italy, Austria, and Luxembourg, have reportedly refused to do so. And I think that there's an understanding that it's a very dangerous precedent to allow the United States to come to a country and effectively appoint a interim president and then transfer all of the assets, in the United States to that leader. Clearly, many countries, particularly in the Caribbean, as the CARICOM, which is the Community of Caribbean Nations, itself manifested against what is going on. If they fear that a similar fate could befall them, should the United States be allowed to effectively depose the government of Maduro and appoint this new Juan Guaido regime.
And more than half of the European Union member states, of course, are behind Mr. Guaido, while Mr. President Maduro has Russia and China by his side. And it's safe to say that these are global powers. So how does the rest of the world see the crisis in Venezuela?
Well, I think it's important that it's not just Russia and China. The United States is trying to paint this as a clash of civilizations narrative of the Western democracies against the authoritarian regimes like, Russia or China or Turkey. But it's important to note, South Africa, one of the world's largest democracies, is against U.S. intervention in Venezuela. Likewise, a number of countries in Europe, like Greece, Austria, and Italy, likewise are against what is going on, as well as countries in the Caribbean and Mexico, Uruguay, and Bolivia. So, there definitely is a number of countries that are refusing to follow Washington's line and want to prevent the very, very real threat of a U.S. military intervention or a civil war that could ensue in Venezuela.
Are perhaps other Latin American countries worried that this kind of impasse or this kind of crisis could spread to the rest of the region? I'm reminded of the Arab Spring in Northern Africa, wherein one crisis started in one country and then it spread to the rest of the region, like as a domino effect. Are the Latin American countries worried?
Well, I think that the more apt analogy is Libya, where the United States similarly, backed a very hardly popular, a parallel government with aerial bombardment, with NATO bombardment, and led to the overthrow of the Gaddafi government, which led to the Gaddafi government, authoritarian as it was actually quite successful in channeling oil wealth to the population and maintaining social welfare system. And with the collapse of the Libyan state, you had a massive flow of refugees to Europe, the same refugee problem that is being denounced by right-wing European parties, the same parties that have supported this intervention in Libya. So I think there's a real danger in Latin America that already, as a result of the economic crisis, which has a lot to do with the U.S. financial sanctions that were imposed on the country in August of 2017, we have, according to the UN, something like 3 million Venezuelan migrants. This certainly is not at all the crisis has been made out to be, given that there's 7 million Colombian displaced people as a result of the Colombian civil war. But with this oil embargo that's been imposed, which will destroy Venezuela's economy, seeing something like at least 15% contraction on top of the already 11% contraction. So the economy is going to shrink by over a quarter this year, largely as a result of sanctions. And this is going to mean a lot of Venezuelans will leave the country and go to neighboring Brazil and Colombia, and a U.S. military intervention would only magnify the consequences of such an exodus. So there's definitely the U.S. is playing a very dangerous game in destabilizing Venezuela.
All right, Lucas, thank you so much for insight. We appreciate it. There is a political analyst and journalist, Lucas Koerner, joining us live via Skype from Caracas in Venezuela, just giving us an update on the developments coming out of Venezuela. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.